The Child and Adolescent Learner and Learning Principles Summary for Week 4 to 6. Week 4. Unit to Developmental Theories and Other Relevant Theories topic. Sigmund Freud's Psychosexual Theory. Psychosexual development is a central element of the psychoanalytic sexual drive theory. Freud believed that personality developed through a series of childhood stages in which pleasure-seeking energies from the child became focused on certain erogenous areas. The three components and personality adjustment: the ID, the ego, the superego. The ID, which exists from birth and it is most prominent in the newborn baby, is the subconscious part. Ego is the rational, conscious part. It begins to emerge later in infancy and helps the child relate to the realities of the environment and the constraints imposed by others without losing a healthy concept of self. Superego. The superego can be thought of as something like the conscience. Ideally, it acts as a guide to behavior. The rule of conflict. Each of the psychosexual stages is associated with a particular conflict that must be resolved before the individual can successfully advance to the next stage. The resolution of each of these conflicts requires the expenditure of sexual energy, and the more energy that is expended at a particular stage, the more the important characteristics of the stage remain with the individual as he or she matures psychologically. Frustration, overindulgence, and fixation. Some people do not seem to be able to leave one stage and proceed on to the next. One reason for this may be that the needs of the developing individuals at any particular stage may not have been adequately met, in which case there is frustration, or possibly the person's needs may have been so well satisfied that he or she is reluctant to leave the psychological benefits of a particular stage in which there is overindulgence. But frustration and overindulgence, or any combination of the two, may lead to what psychoanalysts can call fixation at a particular psychosexual stage. Fixation refers to the theoretical notion that a portion of the individual's libido has been permanently invested in a particular stage of his development. It is assumed that some libido is permanently invested in each psychosexual stage, and thus each person will behave in some ways that are characteristics of infancy or early childhood. Psychosexual stages of development. The 5 psychosexual stages of development. First is oral stage, 0 to 1 years old. Anal stage, 1 to 3 years. Phallic stage, 3 to 5 years or 6 years. Latency stage, 5 or 6 to puberty. Genital stage, puberty to adult. Oral stage. In the first stage of personality development, the libido is centered in a baby's mouth. It gets much satisfaction from putting all sorts of things in its mouth to satisfy the libido, and thus its ID demands, which at the stage in life are oral or mouth-orientated, such as sucking, biting, and breastfeeding. Anal stage. The libido now becomes focused on the anus, and the child derives great pleasure from defecating The child is now fully aware that they are a person in their own right and that their wishes can bring them into conflict with the demands of the outside world. Example, their ego has developed. Phallic stage. Sensitivity now becomes concentrated in the genitals and masturbation in both sexes becomes a new source of pleasure. The child becomes aware of anatomical sex differences which sets in motion and conflict between erotic attraction, resentment, rivalry, jealousy, and fear which Freud called the Oedipus complex in boys and the Electra complex in girls. Latency stage. No further psychosexual development takes place during this stage. Latent means hidden. The libido is dormant. Freud thought that most sexual impulses are repressed during the latent stage, and sexual energy can be sublimated. Defense mechanism. Towards schoolwork, hobbies, and friendship, much of the child's energy is channeled into developing new skills and acquiring new knowledge, and play becomes largely confined to other children of the same gender. Genital stage. This is the last stage of Freud's psychosexual theory of personality development and begins in puberty. It is time of adolescent sexual experimentation, the successful resolution of which is settling down in a loving one-to-one relationship with another person. In our 20s, sexual instinct is directed to heterosexual pleasure rather than self-pleasure like during the phallic stage. For Freud, the proper outlet of the sexual instinct is in adults was through heterosexual intercourse. Fixation and conflict may prevent this, with the consequence that sexual perversions may develop. So, Sigmund Freud's theory suggested that human behavior is influenced by unconscious memories, thoughts, and urges. This theory also proposes that the psyche comprises three aspects: the ID, ego, and superego. The ID is entirely unconscious while the ego operates in conscious mind. These psychosexual stages capture the main growth points of a person from infancy to adulthood and focus on different facets of wants, needs, and desires. So in week 5, our topic is all about Piaget's stages of cognitive development. Piaget's theory of cognitive development is a comprehensive theory about the nature and development of human intelligence. It was originated by the Swiss developmental psychologist Jean Piaget. The theory deals with the nature of knowledge itself and how humans gradually come to acquire, construct, and use it. The four basic cognitive concepts: schema, assimilation, accommodation, equilibration. Schema. Piaget's used the term schema to refer to the cognitive structures by which individuals intellectually adapt to and organize their environment. It is an individual's way to understand or create meaning about a thing or experience. Assimilation. This is the process of fitting a new experience into an existing or previously created cognitive structure or schema. If the child sees another dog, this time a little smaller one, he would make sense of what he is seeing by adding this new information, a different looking dog, into his schema of dog accommodation. This is the process of creating a new schema. If the same child now sees another animal that looks a little bit like a dog, but somehow differently, he might try to fit it into his schema of a dog and says, "Look, mommy, what a funny looking dog. Its bark is funny too." Then the mommy explains, "That's not a funny looking dog, that's a goat." With mommy's further description, the child will now create a new schema, that of a goat. He now adds a new file in his filing cabinet. Equilibration. Piagets believe that people have the natural need to understand how the world works and to find order, structure, and predictability in their life. Equilibration is achieving proper balance between assimilation and accommodation. When our experiences do not match our schema, plural of schema, or cognitive structures, we experience cognitive disequilibrium. This means there is a discrepancy between what is perceived and what is understood. We then exert effort to assimilation and accommodation to establish equilibrium once more. Piaget's stages of cognitive development have 4 stages. First is sensory motor stage, second is pre-operational stage, third is concrete operational stage, fourth is formal operational stage. Sensory motor stage. The first stage corresponds from birth to infancy. This is the stage when a child who is initially reflexive in grasping, sucking, and reaching becomes more organized in his movement and activity. The term sensory motor focuses on the prominence of the senses and muscles movement through which the infant comes to learn about himself and the world. There is one part of sensory motor, the object permanence. This is the ability of the child to know that an object still exists even when out of sight. This ability is attained in the sensory motor stage. Second, pre-operational stage. The pre-operational covers from about 2 to 7 years old, roughly corresponding to the preschool years. Intelligence at this stage is intuitive in nature. At this stage, the child can now make mental representation and is able to pretend the child is now ever closer to the use of symbols. This stage is highlighted by the following. Symbolic function. This is the ability to represent objects and events. Egocentrism. This is the tendency of the child to only see his point of view and to assume that everyone also has his same point of view. Centration. This refers to the tendency of the child to only focus on one aspect of a thing or event and include other aspects. Irreversibility. Pre-operational children still have the inability to reverse their thinking. Animism. This is the tendency of children to attribute human-like traits, thinking, or characteristics to inanimate objects. Transductive reasoning. This refers to the pre-operational child's type of reasoning that is neither inductive nor deductive reasoning, appears to be formed particular to particular. Concrete operational stage. This stage is characterized by the ability of the child to think logically but only in terms of concrete objects. This covers approximately the ages between 8 to 11 years or the elementary school years. The concrete operational stage is marked by the following. Decentering. This refers to the ability of the child to perceive the different features of objects and situations. Reversibility. During the stage of concrete operations, the child can now follow that certain operations can be done in reverse. Conservation. This is the ability to know that certain properties of objects like number, mass, volume, or area do not change even if there is a change in appearance. Seriation. This refers to the ability to order or arrange things in a series based on one dimension such as weight, volume, or sizes. Formal operational stage. In the final stage of formal operations covering ages between 12 and 15 years, thinking becomes more logical. They can now solve abstract problems and can hypothesize. This stage is characterized by the following. Hypothetical reasoning. This is the ability to come up with different hypotheses about a problem and to gather weight data in order to make a final decision or judgment. Analogical reasoning. This is to perceive the relationship in one instant and then use the relationship to narrow down possible answers in another similar situation or problem. Deductive reasoning. This is the ability to think logically by applying a general rule to a particular instance or situation. So, cognitive development means how children think, explore, and figure things out. It is the development of knowledge, skills, problem solving, and dispositions, which help children to think about and understand the world around them. Brain development is part of cognitive development. Piaget suggests that in addition to physical experience and concrete manipulations, the learner needs social experience and interactions with a wide assortment of people. We point out that younger children learn to relinquish their egocentrism through social interaction and adjust to others at the emotional level. So in week 6, our topic is all about Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory of development. So psychosocial theory of development. According to the psychosocial theory, development is a product of the ongoing interactions between individuals and their social environments. Societies with their structures, laws, rules, rituals, and sanctions are organized to guide individual growth toward a particular ideal of mature adulthood. Erikson describes the following 8 stages: trust versus mistrust, from birth to 12 months. The infant forms a loving, trusting relationship with a caregiver, which in turn forms the foundation for the expectation of the world as a secure and pleasant place to live. Autonomy versus shame, 1 to 3 years. Infants and toddlers begin to explore the world and assert their independence. Initiative versus guilt, 3 to 6 years. The preschooler needs to rely on active, purposeful behavior more and more as their environment presents new challenges and demands more responsibility. Industry versus inferiority. 6 to 12 years, the school-age child must learn to deal with demands to learn a wide range of new skills, including the task of formal schooling. Identity versus role confusion. 12 to 18 years. The primary task at this developmental stage is the formation of the sense of personal identity with regards to such things as options, examples on politics and religions, sexual rules and occupation. Intimacy versus isolation. Young adulthood. At this stage, individuals face the task of forming intimate relationship with others. Generativity versus stagnation. Middle adulthood. The focus of this stage is on parenting. By generativity, Erikson means helping the new generation to develop and lead useful lives. Integrity versus despair. Late adulthood. If the individual has been successful in resolving the crisis associated with earlier stages, when he or she looks back on his or her life, it will be with a feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment. Erikson describes this as a feeling of integrity. So, Erikson believed that a strong sense of personal identity was important for developing intimate relationship. And studies have demonstrated that those with a poor sense of self tend to have less committed relationships and are more likely to struggle with emotional isolation, loneliness, and depression.